talk about some of the more intense hacks that you maybe participated in. Tell me about Operation Tunisia.
Operation Tunisia was cool. It started off as an anonymous operation. Obviously, the people of Tunisia were like doing their thing. They were out in the streets protesting, and they were doing awesome. But the government started doing some weird things with the internet and communications. They started intercepting communications by redirecting traffic. For example, if you were inside Tunisia and tried to access Yahoo or Facebook and try to access it via HTTPS, what their like low-level routing would do is forward you either to one of their phishing servers, basically, or a middleman server. Or finally, they'll just redirect you to yahoo.com, but without the HTTPS, stripping that encryption mechanism. What that did was it compromised, probably thousands to millions of Tunisians who were trying to access the internet and communicate online. And there were even like, stories or rumors. I mean, I don't know if it was confirmed, but there were Tunisians that were bloggers and all that getting raided randomly, like just randomly getting raided. And I would assume it's because of this. They were hijacking traffic, monitoring journalists and bloggers, and figuring out who's inciting riots or who's inciting the revolution. And
you guys obviously didn't like that?
Well, Anonymous itself didn't like that, but we had like a subgroup called Internet Feds, right? That was like a little group before LOSEC. And it was much broader. It was like 30 people in there, a lot of random people that shouldn't even be in there in the first place. But like, one of my mates from LOSEC actually created like a grease monkey script or something to redirect the redirect. So once it would redirect you off to the insecure server or to like a man-in-the-middle server. It would redirect you actually back to the original, real HTTPS-backed Yahoo server or Facebook server. That's what really caught my interest. I'm like, wow, this government is like, I understand they don't want this revolution, I understand that. But now you're messing with the privacy of your users. And now you're playing, like, now you're a super dictator. Like, now you're not even cool with my books. It's time for war, basically. So then we moved on to hacking the Prime Minister's website. Apparently that was a big crush to the government. Apparently because, I say apparently because the response was so extreme. As soon as we defaced the Prime Minister's website with a message like, this is anonymous, we are Legion, we don't forget, we don't forgive, expect us, they basically firewalled the entire Tunisian internet. So if you were in the United States or anywhere else outside of Tunisia, you would not be able to access any sites within Tunisia. But when we spoke to Tunisians in Tunisia, they said, no, our internet's fine. I could go to the Prime Minister's website right now. It's cool. I see this picture. And at this point, there was a Tunisian activist who, was really into Anonymous. And he said, what can I do? I'm inside Tunisia. So we had the bright idea of, well, what would happen if, and this goes back to that first point I made earlier, how do you bypass a firewall? Well, you make it call you. So we had this guy connect through like a team viewer, a remote desktop. We connected to his machine. From his machine, we rehacked the Prime Minister's website because the original vulnerability was still open. And so imagine this, right? The guy is sitting at his computer watching a bunch of hackers, in this case it's Sabu and some other guy, and he sees his mouse moving around the screen, typing into his web browser, exploiting a vulnerability, hacking the site, grabbing like the defacement message, which was like a letter to Tunisia. And he got to witness all of that in real time. That was really cool. I can't imagine how it felt for him. But we hacked the Tunisian Prime Minister's website internally from inside Tunisia. And at that point, that's when the Tunisian government began completely shutting down internet, very similar to what Egypt did during the Egyptian revolution.
And the rest is history.
Yeah, well, and then after that, I mean, the final nail in the coffin, Operation Tunisia, after we were all firewalled out of Tunisia, I mean, what else can we really do besides, just tweeting the story and getting it out? So everybody's doing that. They're doing their whole publicity thing and pushing the issue. So I'm over here like, okay, well, I'm a security researcher. I've audited machines and networks for many years. My time with Anonymous is not conclusive to my skills. Like, I've been doing this for a mass amount of time. So one thing I did was I did a network-wide security audit of Tunisia's infrastructure. And what I realized, what I found was that Tunisia's entire government communications, their entire network for emails through Blackberries, the cell phone companies that we're using, the embassy internet systems, they all relied on 2 DNS servers for the entire infrastructure of the Tunisian government. So I had to bring them down. And by bringing those 2 Tunisian DNS servers down, hitting it with like 50 gigabits per second or something, I literally like destroyed the entire infrastructure, giving the Tunisians an opportunity to probably do more. Because at that point, the government had no way of communicating with each other unless they had, analog phone systems, which I'm pretty sure they did. But it really caused them a lot of problems, I'm sure.
Now, you said in the past that in those hacks with Anonymous, with Lulzsec, and with others, that you were sloppy, and ultimately that's what resulted in the FBI finding you. Can you tell me, how were you sloppy? In what ways were they able to track you down ultimately?
Well, the biggest mistake I made was even messing with Anonymous in the first place. I mean, Anonymous is cool. The idea is wonderful. But the problem with Anonymous is that its major failure is exactly what you see on Twitter. They centralize themselves. Compare Anonymous back on 4chan, and I'll compare Anonymous now. What's the difference, right? Everyone on 4chan was just Anonymous. There was no nicknames, no pseudonyms, no Twitters, no IRC, no sort of public profile at all. So if one guy did a hack, you don't know who that guy is from the hole in the wall. He's just Anonymous. Now, when it was moved to a certain IRC network, and it was moved onto Twitter, I mean, yeah, it gave it a lot of prominence because now you can communicate with journalists directly. Now you could get stories out. You could, do your little PR propaganda, whatever it is that they were doing. But it left a lot of chances open for mistakes. In my case, my biggest mistake, besides messing with Anonymous, not messing with, joining the idea, was using the nickname Sabu. Sabu was a nickname that I used, a pseudonym that I used since the 90s. So I've also went to war with other people and other groups from the 90s on using that name. So over the years, people collected little tidbits of information, like, oh, he goes by Xavier. So, I mean, I had no problem with that, right? Because as a security researcher, that was my name. I went by Xavier, which is my middle name. I went by Xavier, and I released security research, advisories, exploits. You can find all my work if you just go online and type in Xavier De Leon or whatever, or even go to my old blog, zavsec.blogspot.com or whatever, and all my old research is there. Not all of it, but you get to see my exploits, my local root exploits that I developed. So using the nickname Sabu was a major flaw in my strategy. I didn't intend to use Sabu. I actually first connected with Anonymous using a completely different name. If you ask me what the name is, I've forgotten. It was something random. I probably would have avoided all this drama had I continued to use the name. But it was a situation where, like, I was using a shell server here in New York, and I had several different screens running. One screen was running IRSSI or BitchX, IRC client BitchX, on FNet, and then I ran another screen connected to and
it's the same.
The IRC network.
The same name.
No, well, no. So basically, I had Sabu over here and I had random name over here. So in one of those nights where I'm like not even thinking, I lost my connection to this server. I reconnected and I used my name Sabu because that was my actual username on the server. And if you ever use BitchX, it'll point back to the username. So if you try to log on to IRC, hop on IRC using, while you're logged into the root user, you're going to see that when you log into the server, it's going to try to use a nickname root, right? So in this case, it's my username on the server, which was running Solaris, by the way. It was awesome. Old Solaris system. Since my username was actually Sabu, when it connected to the anonymous IRC network, it came up as Sabu. And I kind of said, well, I mean, it's too late now. It is what it is. I'm already logged, so.
Might as well stick with it.
Might as well stick with it.
And once the FBI came to you, once they came to your door, they put you in a very difficult situation, didn't they?
They basically put me in a situation where I had to choose between my family and an idea. Now, the idea is beautiful. I love the idea, but I'm not going to choose, 2 kids. I'm not going to choose the movement over 2 kids. I mean, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry that boggles anybody's minds. But I'm pretty sure anyone with children would agree that you would choose your children over, something as, as strange as that. I mean, they were a group of strangers, and I have a lot of friends with them. I still have friends there that are probably waiting for me to come back online and talk to them. But, it's nothing personal.
And how did the FBI monitoring work? Because at that point, effectively, they started watching what you were doing and asked you to more or less continue what you were doing, but with them watching. How exactly did that monitoring work?
Well, so it goes back to that previous question. Mm-hmm. The whole point was, well, keep doing what it is that you're doing. Mm-hmm. To them, that's the most important thing. To suddenly change my modus operandi and start, texting people like, hey, can I have your number? Mm-hmm. I want to call you, which I never did before, would have been strange. So they just simply said, well, keep doing what it is that you're doing, and we're just going to sit back and watch. So it really entailed just watching me, monitoring me. And it was like a Windows laptop, and it just had like a keylogger and a screenshot taker, and it was all automated. I'm pretty sure it was like a I don't know if it was a kernel rootkit that they had set up. Mm-hmm. I can't really say for sure because I didn't do a security audit of the machine. Technically, that's federal property, right? So I don't want to sit there and try to debug the software and break it and go to prison for destroying, federal property.
And did they provide you with any other resources, servers or accounts or anything like that to help?
Well, at one point, they provided servers for, mm-hmm. For use by anybody, and those servers ended up not being used by anybody. Hmm. It's kind of funny how people talk about it. Well, he provided servers to, the hackers. Well, they didn't use the servers. It's not like it's not like I wanted to provide it. Mm-hmm. That obviously is part of my cooperation agreement. They provided a server. Hey, you guys want to use a server? By all means. I wasn't pushing it, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But, that's pretty much what that entailed. Just sitting there logging and just keep doing what I'm doing. And that provided me an opportunity. Keep doing what I'm doing? All right, hack the planet.
And they really kind of encouraged you to do that. And they said that you stopped about 300 hacks of domestic targets, but ultimately they were fine with you hacking international targets, is that right?
Well, the thing is, I wasn't hacking anymore. I had to stop hacking. Mm. So all I could do is just be me and try to push issues and work on operations and keep doing what it is that I was doing before I even got arrested. Mm-hmm. Nothing changed between me before my arrest and me after my arrest. The only thing changed was that, I had a situation where the computer was logged, which is kind of ironic because most of the people that got arrested anyway, if you look at the discoveries and the evidence, they all had IRC logging enabled. It baffles my mind, mm-hmm. Especially one of those guys from the UK. Like, they find his computer full of IRC logs. You want to judge me for having my computer logged, but you still provide the same sort of evidence, rather. It's a lot of hypocrisy in regards to that. But that's pretty much really what happened, just the IRC logging.